July 21, 2025, began as another scorching day in the hills north of Limassol. The relentless sun beat down on the parched earth, baking the landscape in a shimmering haze. Locals went about their routines, accustomed to the oppressive heat, but unaware that this day would soon become unforgettable for all the wrong reasons. The air was thick with the scent of pine and the constant hum of cicadas, a familiar summer symphony in Cyprus. But suddenly, that comfort was pierced by a sharp, acrid smell, smoke. It crept in slowly at first, barely noticeable, but soon it was impossible to ignore. What began as a thin wisp of smoke on the horizon rapidly transformed into a monstrous, churning cloud. Within minutes the sky darkened and the threat became undeniable. The wind, hot and dry, fanned the flames, feeding the growing inferno. The countryside's peace shattered as a deafening roar like a freight train echoed through the valleys. The firestorm moved with terrifying speed, consuming everything in its path and leaving only chaos behind. Panic spread as flames raced across the landscape, devouring fields and forests, turning the sky a terrifying, unnatural orange. The sun disappeared behind a curtain of smoke, casting an eerie twilight over the land. Ash fell like gritty snow, blanketing homes, gardens, and ancient olive groves. The air was thick with soot, making it hard to breathe, and the world seemed to shrink to a haze of smoke and falling embers. Villagers grabbed what they could, family photos, pets, a few precious belongings, and fled, leaving behind lifetimes of memories and the homes they had built with their own hands. The fear and heartbreak were palpable. The fire leapt from treetop to treetop, devouring forests that had stood for centuries. Ancient pines, once symbols of endurance, were reduced to torches in seconds, fueling the relentless blaze. The sounds of destruction filled the air, crackling timber, exploding pine cones, and the desperate cries of wildlife fleeing for their lives. The forest, once alive with birdsong, was now a scene of chaos and terror. As night fell, the mountains glowed with an eerie, hellish light, deepening the dread. The fire's glow could be seen for miles, a constant reminder of the devastation unfolding. The Limassol wildfire had arrived with brutal force, marking the start of one of Cyprus's darkest chapters. The scale of destruction was overwhelming, and the fight for survival had only just begun. The island now faced a battle for its very land and soul. Communities would be tested, and the scars left behind would be felt for generations to come. The fire ignited near Aracapas, a picturesque village nestled among the mountains, known for its stone houses and carefully tended terraced fields. Life here had always moved at a gentle pace, with families working the land as their ancestors had for generations. At first the blaze seemed manageable, just another challenge for a community used to the rhythms of nature. But the land was parched from months of drought, and when fierce winds swept through the valleys, the fire exploded out of control, leaping from field to field with terrifying speed. Flames swept through Aracapas, devouring gardens and orchards, then raced toward the neighboring villages of Eptagonia, Akapnu, and Ora, places where generations had tended the land, raised families, and built their lives from the soil. In just a few hours, homes, farms, and entire livelihoods vanished. The fire left behind only smoldering ruins and blackened earth where vibrant communities once stood. Families fled with only the clothes on their backs, forced to leave behind cherished possessions and memories. They gathered in makeshift shelters, faces etched with shock, fear, and uncertainty about what the future would hold. Centuries-old olive groves, the pride of the region, were reduced to ash. Flocks of sheep and goats, once the backbone of rural life, were lost. The fire shattered close-knit communities and erased a way of life that had endured for centuries. Over 55 square kilometers of forest and farmland were scorched, devastating not only the people, but also the habitats of countless animals. The soil itself was sterilized, making recovery even more difficult. Ancient trees that had stood for hundreds of years were wiped out in moments. Wildlife, including the rare Cyprus mouflon, either fled in terror or perished in the flames, leaving the hills eerily silent. The once lush landscape was transformed into a wasteland of black and gray, with only the skeletal remains of trees and the thick smell of ash lingering in the air. Dozens of homes were destroyed, infrastructure melted and twisted by the heat, and economic losses soared into the tens of millions. Roads, power lines, and water systems were left in ruins, compounding the hardship. But the true cost was measured not just in money, but in lost heritage and scarred earth. Priceless cultural artifacts and historic sites were reduced to rubble, erasing irreplaceable links to the past. For the people of Limassol and the surrounding villages, the fire left a deep wound, one that would take years, if not decades, to heal. The pain of loss was written on every face, as neighbors consoled each other amid the ruins. The future was uncertain and the task of rebuilding seemed daunting. Yet, even in the face of such devastation, the community began to clear debris, determined to restore what they could and support one another through the long recovery ahead. The fire changed their world forever, leaving scars on the land and in the hearts of those who survived. But amid the ashes there remained a glimmer of hope, a belief that together, they could rebuild and heal. The Limassol wildfire was born from a deadly mix of extreme heat, drought, and wind. Cyprus was gripped by a relentless heat wave, over 40 degrees Celsius for days, baking the land to tinder. Months of drought left reservoirs low and vegetation bone dry. Once sparked, the fire leapt into the crowns of pine trees, creating an unstoppable crown fire. Erratic winds from the Troodos Mountains fanned the flames, pushing them across valleys and slopes at terrifying speeds. Burning embers started new spot fires, outflanking firefighters. This was a true megafire, so intense it generated its own weather. Traditional firefighting methods were overwhelmed. The Limassol fire was a warning. In a changing climate, these monsters are becoming the new normal. Investigators quickly turned to the fire's origin. In Cyprus, most wildfires are human-caused, accidents or negligence. But the Limassol fire started in multiple locations, raising the specter of arson. The idea that someone could inflict such devastation fueled anger and disbelief. Police launched a massive investigation, appealing for public help. Whether by accident or design, the fire underscored the need for vigilance. Public awareness campaigns and strict regulations became more urgent than ever. Even a single careless or malicious act can trigger catastrophe in these conditions. The question of arson lingers, but the lesson is clear. Fire prevention is everyone's responsibility. In a hotter, drier climate, the margin for error is vanishing. As the inferno raged across the hills and forests, firefighters, forest rangers, and volunteers formed a thin, determined line of defense. Shoulder to shoulder, they stood against the advancing wall of flames, knowing that the fate of their homes and communities depended on their courage and teamwork. They battled searing heat, choking smoke, and unpredictable, shifting winds, working with little rest and often pushing themselves to the brink of exhaustion. Every breath was a struggle, every moment a test of endurance as they fought to keep the fire at bay. On the ground, crews dug fire breaks and cleared away dry vegetation, often just meters from the roaring flames. Their hands blistered and faces streaked with ash, they worked tirelessly, knowing that every barrier they built could mean the difference between destruction and survival. In the air, helicopters and planes swooped low through thick, swirling smoke, dropping water and fire retardant onto the burning forests below. Pilots braved dangerous conditions, flying close to the flames to give ground crews a fighting chance. Local residents joined the fight, using tractors to create fire breaks, forming neighborhood watch groups, and supporting exhausted crews with food, water, and words of encouragement. Their determination and resourcefulness became a lifeline for those on the front lines. The community's resilience became a powerful force, uniting people from all walks of life in a common cause. Together, they faced the crisis with unwavering solidarity. Every setback was met with acts of heroism. A firefighter defending a home from the encroaching flames, refusing to give up even as the fire drew near, a pilot making a final daring drop of water just in time to halt the fire's advance, a volunteer working through the night, illuminated only by the glow of the fire and the headlights of passing vehicles, determined to protect their community. These individual acts, multiplied by thousands, turned the tide of the battle. Each person's effort, no matter how small, became part of a larger story of hope and resistance. The battle was long and grueling, stretching through sleepless nights and endless days, but the spirit of Limassol's people refused to yield. Their perseverance shone brightest when hope seemed dim. They became the heroes of Cyprus's darkest summer, standing together in the aftermath, soot-covered but unbroken, a testament to the power of unity and courage. Their courage and unity saved lives and homes, bringing relief and gratitude to families who had feared the worst. In the face of disaster, they became the solution, coordinating emergency responses and helping each other rebuild what was lost. The fire could not break their resolve. Instead, it revealed the true strength of a community united by hope, compassion, and the will to overcome. The scale of the Limassol megafire quickly overwhelmed Cyprus's resources. The government activated the EU's civil protection mechanism, and help poured in. Greece, Israel, Italy, France, and Spain sent aircraft, crews, and equipment. The sight of foreign planes over Cyprus was a powerful symbol of hope. International teams worked side by side with Cypriot crews, sharing expertise and relief. Humanitarian aid supported displaced families. The response showed that in a world of climate-driven disasters, no country can stand alone. Robust international cooperation is essential. The solidarity shown to Cyprus became a beacon of light amid the destruction. In crisis, humanity can transcend borders and unite against shared threats. The Limassol fire was a local tragedy but also a symptom of a global crisis. Record heat, drought, and dry landscapes are part of a disturbing pattern driven by climate change. The Mediterranean is warming faster than the global average, making wildfires more frequent and intense. What was once extreme is now the new normal. Hotter, drier conditions create landscapes perpetually ready to burn. Suppression alone is no longer enough. Adaptation and mitigation are essential. We must invest in fire-resilient landscapes, manage forests, and build prepared communities. Reducing greenhouse gas emissions is critical. The smoke from Limassol carried a warning to the world. These disasters are interconnected. Ignoring the message is no longer an option. The future depends on urgent, meaningful action. Long after the flames died, the scars of the Limassol fire remained. The landscape was transformed. Blackened trees, ash-laden air, and vulnerable hillsides. Winter rains brought new threats, mudslides and erosion. Communities faced a long, painful recovery. Families struggled to rebuild, haunted by trauma and loss. The agricultural sector was devastated. Ancient groves and hives were gone. Tourism suffered as once beautiful trails became stark reminders of disaster. Yet, amid the devastation, unity and resilience emerged. Neighbors became family, supporting each other through recovery. The bravery of firefighters and the outpouring of support became sources of pride. These bonds of solidarity laid the foundation for healing. The human spirit endured, even in the face of overwhelming loss. The Limassol wildfire became a catalyst for change. The focus shifted from grief to action, rebuilding smarter and stronger. Forest management was reimagined, replanting with fire-resistant species, creating fire breaks, and using controlled grazing. The goal, a mosaic landscape to slow future fires. Community resilience became central, better warning systems, evacuation plans, and volunteer firefighting groups. Public awareness campaigns empowered citizens to prevent fires. The fire showed that everyone has a stake in the fight. Out of sorrow, hope was born, rooted in action and collective will. Volunteers planting new trees symbolized a new beginning. Recovery was about regenerating land and community. The fire left a scar but also ignited unity and innovation. Cyprus emerged determined to forge a safer, more sustainable future.